Can everyone hear me? All right. Thank you very much. Let's go back a slide. So my name is Seger. I'm the co-founder of Parrot Analytics. What we do is we measure the popularity of content around the world. And yesterday we had a panel, and for those of you who attended, we talked about knowledge is power. And we heard a lot of frustrations about how producers typically and historically don't have a lot of knowledge about how their content is doing, even in their local markets. And so we're here in Canada talking to Canadian producers, but really your content is traveling around the world, right? So we talk a lot about global demand for content and how the content, any piece of content is doing around the world. So we're talking about this concept of science of popularity, and the whole concept, what we're trying to say is that it doesn't need to be a scary thing to talk about, data and information and, lots of terms are used interchangeably, but we just want to shed some light on what it actually means for a producer to use data in their daily lives. And so the way we're going to do this is just by explaining a little bit about what we do to give you the context and then give you some examples by zooming in onto the Canadian market. So as we know, and this panel will talk more about an increasingly rapid proliferation of content distribution platforms now. Your content can live on any number of different platforms, many over-the-top platforms around the world now. This means that audiences are now more fragmented than ever across all those platforms, which means that the industry's ability to measure these audiences is also becoming less and less effective because a lot of these platforms are closed garden platforms that don't share their data externally. And so those are some of the frustrations that we even reiterated yesterday on our panel. So the problem that the industry has historically has been the fact that doing a panel or survey-based approach to measure how a piece of content is doing has been enough to date. Maybe not for producers, but for broadcasters, certainly. Now that's very quickly becoming not enough for anyone, really, because you can't survey or panel your way through to hundreds. There are now thousands of over-the-top platforms around the world. So at the heart of all of this is this relationship, right? Consumers and content. We spend, and I think as content producers, really, what our goal to provide to you is an understanding of this relationship quantitatively, right? And that takes many ways and shapes and forms, by the way, right? Like if you're an advertiser, you care about something else than if you're the broadcaster, and if you're the broadcaster, you care about something else, and if you're an SVOD platform. So without getting into the complexities of it, at the heart of it is what is popular, right? How do you even define what is popular? And it's almost like seemingly overnight we woke up to a world where popularity is in the eye of the beholder, right? I mentioned this recently. Everyone was like, well, what does that really mean? Well, it means that depending on who you ask, you get different answers of what popularity even means, the very definition of the word, right? So historically, you ask a linear broadcaster, how do you define what's popular to you? And they'll say, well, what rates well? What gets good ratings, right? Because that's my bread and butter. That's my ad revenue is based on what rates well. That's how I define what's popular. Now you ask an SVOD platform what they define as popular, and it isn't even like the number of streams that they have on the platform. What they care about is their subscriber growth, as long as the subscriber numbers keep going up, and subscriber retention, right? So there's the two metrics that drive SVOD platforms. So seemingly overnight, half the industry doesn't even agree on how to define what is popular. So what does that really mean for content producers if they want to understand like how popular is my content? So lots of fragmentation, making the industry much more difficult to understand the very definition of popularity. What we thought to do was, given where the industry is heading, given where technology is heading and how that's changing consumer patterns, is to talk about this concept of global demand for content, right? Because at the heart of how content performs is how much demand is there for any piece of content. So we went out and said, how do people express their demand for content today? And how will they express their demand for content in the future, right? So if I'm a fan of content and I find out about a TV show, the first thing I'll do about it is I'll go on Google and search for it, right? And then I might watch a trailer for it somewhere, and then that might pique my interest. I might want to read about it more on IMDb or Wikipedia or something. Then I might want to ask my friends and family about it on social media, or might read some more blogs about it. I might watch it if it's on a platform or if it's on air, on TV. If it's not even available in my market, I grew up in New Zealand where a lot of content isn't really available. And what you do as a consumer this day and age is you'll go online and try to find them, legitimately or otherwise, right? So I might go on like BitTorrent to try to torrent it, or Popcorn Time and try to stream it. Each of these different platforms has hundreds of millions of people that are engaging with content on a daily basis. They're reading about it, they're researching it, they're critiquing it, they're watching it, they're streaming it, they're sharing it, posting about it, etc., etc. But lots and lots of different data, and that data means different, each of these data points means different things. So what we also had to do was come up with a way to combine all those signals together, right, into a single measurement system. So we basically said, and a lot of you heard about like social media and social data and so on. Well, actually, a lot of that is just noise. Like, we can probably all agree between us in the room that if I watch 3 back-to-back episodes of a TV show, that's a much stronger indication of my demand for the show than if I press like on its Facebook page. Right? Like, the first series of actions took me 3 hours as opposed to like a split second. And so we had to develop the system that allows us then to combine all these different signals, from the streaming to the consumption to the social buzz to the researching and critiquing and so on, all into a single measurement system. So into a single number that basically processes over 1 billion data points a day, that allows us to measure the true demand for content in every single country on the planet, right? So we'll do a really quick dive. This allows us to quantify this relationship. We'll do a really quick dive in a couple of minutes. So top 10 SVOD shows in Canada in 2017. These are TV shows that were produced exclusively in the first instance for an SVOD platform. So naturally, all the shows that you expect to see there being SVOD exclusives. Let's drill deeper. So here we can do, by having a global measurement system, you can do really cool things like let's plot 5 TV shows: American Horror Story, Star Trek Discovery, Orange is the New Black, Handmaid's Tale, and the Grand Tour. And let's plot their US demand against their Canadian demand. So we can see American Horror Story was more popular last year in Canada, whereas Star Trek Discovery was more popular in the US across over the entire year. Now, let's compare a bunch of shows and how they did leading up to the release and then post-release, right? Because having a global measurement system that also measures the demand for content in real time, you can see how content is doing even leading up to its launch. You can see the impact of marketing, how much marketing is going into it, and how much that's driving awareness for the show leading up to it. But once it launches, you want to see how well it's doing on a day-by-day basis, even in between episodes, not necessarily on an episodic basis. So this is American Horror Story. Again, here in Canada, this is the Canadian audience demand for it on an episodic basis, but also we want to see what's happening in between episodes. Are people dropping off? Are they before the next episode comes in? In fact, we can break down, if we can break down the audience demand for a given TV show down to the sentiment, right? Down to how they feel about it. So this opinion index measures the emotional attachment of fans to a particular TV show, right? So we can see that fans were most attached to American Horror Story in Canada at episode 4, right? Now, we can drill down even deeper because we capture so much data from so many different sources. We can see that, for example, in 2017, American Horror Story evoked the emotion fear more than any other emotion for Canadian audiences, right? And for a horror title, that's a good thing, right? But now, again, if you're in a marketing department, you're looking at anticipation. You're looking, I really want to drive up my anticipation leading up to the release of a new season. We can plot genres. So here in Canada, we can see that apocalyptic drama is doing better than historical adventure and superhero series. We can also see in Canada that fans are starting to experience superhero fatigue more than in other markets more quickly. This becomes more clear when we plot the top 10 top subgenres in Canada versus the United States. So we can see, for example, that animated series shows up in the top 5 subgenres in Canada, whereas it doesn't in the US. And sci-fi comedy show up in the US, but it doesn't for Canadian audiences. Now, again, we can drill deeper. So we can say that, hey, let's plot US demand versus Canadian demand and see what subgenres do really well in Canada as opposed to the US. So historical adventures, apocalyptic dramas, and suspense horror do really well in Canada against the US. But sci-fi comedy, and adult comedy, and superhero series still do better in the US than they do in Canada. Last thing here we want to do is look at content import and content export. Again, with the global measurement system, we can do things like what international content performs the best in Canada, right? So French content does really well, obvious reasons. British content does well. These are the top 3 titles from each of these markets that perform the best in Canada. Indian content does okay, but Japanese content does the best out of all international content in Canada. In fact, on a per title basis, content originating from Japan had 80% of the demand that content created in Canada had in Canada in 2017, right? So yesterday there was a panel about underserved audiences, right? And this is what I was thinking as I was looking at our data and our insights for the session, that I don't know how many co-pros a lot of Canadian producers do with Japanese counterparts. I don't know. I don't have that insight. I don't know how many Japanese titles are being imported into Canada. But what we can see is Canadian audiences have really high demand for Japanese content, right? And particularly anime content, which shows up near the top. Now we can look at the inverse. So this is content import. We can look at the export of content and look at where content from Canada travels to the best. Again, with a global measurement system, we can look at and say, content from Canada travels best to Australia, US, New Zealand, South Africa, UK. But interesting, you get to some European countries, Hungary, Switzerland, Portugal, Germany, Ukraine. I was with Christina from Shaftesbury yesterday, and we were looking at how Murdoch Mysteries is #1 in Hungary out of any other country on the planet. And also, interestingly, I was told that there's a lot of co-pros that happen in Canada with Irish counterparts. And this isn't saying that Canadian content is not popular in Ireland. This is just saying last year, here are all the other markets where Canadian content traveled to better, right? So again, when you're looking at what content to produce, what content to create, and where that's going to travel the best, we're starting to have access to some data that we're making available to basically make the whole combination of like art versus science less scary. That's what I'll leave it on. Hand over to these guys. Thank you very much.